Drillick, remember your duty.
The keystone. I remember it now.
Hey there everyone, it's TM Trav here with ESO Tips, and today we're doing something a little different from my usual content. You see, the lore and world building around the Elder Scrolls franchise is one of the biggest reasons people love these games, but with the vastness of each installment in the series, I think some parts of that lore are often overlooked. To me, the community deserves to experience everything the Elder Scrolls universe has to offer, so I'm starting a sub-series that will help make that a reality. On this very first edition of my Elder Scrolls lore series, I'm going to do a deep dive into these silver-skinned humanoids hailing from the swamps of Blackmarsh, the Kothringi. The story of the Kothringi is both tragically fascinating and wildly undertold. So join me as I explore this lesser-known race of men in my inaugural iteration of Lore Lane. Before we dive in though, don't forget to click that subscribe button to keep up with my future Elder Scrolls content. Also, if you enjoy this video, I would really appreciate it if you'd leave a like to help get the YouTube algorithm's gears moving. I'd love to share this story with as many test fans as possible, and apparently likes really help with that. Now that my shameless plug is out of the way, let's get back to your regularly scheduled program. The Kothringi, also known as the Kothri or the Lustrous Folk, were an ancient race of tribal humans thought to have descended from the Needs. They were known to have lived in Blackmarsh, with tribes in areas such as Murkmire and Shadowfen as far back as historical records go. Kothringi culture dates back to the early Merethic era, with some artifacts predating all other known human cultures in Tamriel. Although there are several references suggesting that the Kothringi coexisted peacefully with the Argonians, also native to the region, some texts allude to a conflict between these peoples at the city of Hismir in ancient times. Kothringi craftsmanship was of the highest quality, even by the standards of the University of Gwillim's Antiquarian Circle, who have had exposure to nearly every culture of Tamriel, both ancient and contemporary. The Kothri were also adept shipwrights for swamp folk, creating a unique kind of vessel with a shallow draft, paddles, and a double sail, perfect for navigating the shallow swamps of Blackmarsh and for sailing along the region's rivers and coastlines. The Lustrous folk preferred going nude in their native lands, rarely wearing clothing unless they ventured out for a hunting expedition or some other activity. One of their hunting garments, known as the Harpooner's Wading Kilt, was of remarkably exceptional quality and even imbued its wearer with improved fighting prowess. Elder Scrolls Online players will recognize this kilt as a must-have mythic gear piece for damage dealers. Kothringi weapons consisted of axes, harpoons, and throwing knives. These folk also possessed an aptitude for the arcane arts, with some of their ranks being experts in the schools of illusion and restoration. Another extremely important aspect of Kothringi society was music. The Lustrous folk used music as a form of cultural expression, sometimes even weeping joyful tears when experiencing a particularly spectacular composition. Their excellent craftsmanship showed through their instruments as well. The Kothri often fashioned Wamasu-sized drums from hollow logs, low-humming bowharps from cliffstrider sinew, and wearable chimes made from thin strips and rods of metal crafted in their forges. These chimes hung from strands of rope draped onto or tied around their bodies and would jingle with every stride. The Kothringi's chief deity was Zen, however they are believed to have worshipped Dibella, Mara, and Kinnereth as well. An image depicted on an ancient coin unearthed by a member of the Antiquarian Circle suggests that the Kothri also praised Clavicus Vile at some point in their past, a practice that some of these folk rediscovered around the time of the Elder Scrolls Online. One notable Kothringi swordsman, Zuuk, was the personal knight of Empress Tavia, wife of Renan Cyrodiil III. Zuuk conspired with Tavia to assassinate her husband and carried her secret missives in a decorative scroll case. Upon the Emperor's assassination at the hands of the Morag Tong, Zuuk returned to Blackmarsh and used the wealth he gained in service to the Empire to found a Kothringi settlement atop an ancient Ayleid ruin in Shadowfen. This settlement would come to be known as Zuuk, thereby honoring the knight who founded it. It is widely accepted by scholars and historians that the Kothringi went extinct in the wake of the Nahatan flu around the year 563 of the Second Era, but many of these silver-skinned folk actually survived the deadly disease through supernatural methods. I'd assume that if you're still watching at this point, you're probably not too worried about spoilers, but I'll go ahead and give the disclaimer anyway. The rest of the video includes heavy spoilers related to ESO's Kothringi storyline and a small spoiler about the Zone Quest line in Shadowfen. I'm sure someone will still give me crap about this in the comments, but you've been warned. Although the Kothringi have been mentioned in prior Elder Scrolls installments, namely Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim, the Lustrous folk never actually appeared in-game until ESO. Depending on how you play through the Ebonheart-packed zone of Shadowfen, the Vestige, which is the moniker given to the ESO player character, might first encounter the Kothringi in Stillrise Village. On the outskirts of the village, the Vestige is greeted by a Kothri scout who mentions that Stillrise has been on high alert due to Worm Cult necromancers camped nearby. This scout directs you to speak with Chieftain Zuuk inside the village if you're interested in helping these folks with their necromancer troubles. Upon speaking with the chieftain, she explains that the Worm Cult had raided Stillrise the night before, but the villagers were able to withstand the attack and even trap a few of the necromancer lieutenants inside the cellars of their huts. Zuuk asks if you'd be willing to try getting the cultists to surrender, which, of course, will end in the player character murdering them to death since the worms are not the surrendering type. After accepting this quest, additional dialogue will become available with Zuuk, through which you can ask about the strange color of the villagers' skin.
My what? Oh, we're Kothringi. After the Great Plague from decades past, I fear Stillrise Village is the last of our people.
Unsurprisingly, the necromancers pose little threat to the might of the Vestige, and you're able to take each of them out swiftly. Upon returning to the chieftain, she thanks you for your help.
War Chief Halush's runners told me the worm cultists wouldn't surrender. Unfortunate, but no fault of yours. Stillrise Village is in your debt. In truth, I feared the worm cult lieutenants went to our cellars on purpose to work dark magics from within our village. Well, you've proven yourself a friend of our village. As a friend, we'll entrust you with our secret. It's simpler to show than explain. Please, do not be alarmed. Fear not. We're the same people we were before we gained this affliction.
This surprising revelation explains how the Stillrise villagers survived the Nahatan flu, which had been thought to have driven their race to extinction several years prior. Upon questioning the chieftain further, the Vestige learns that, in a desperate attempt to save her village from the deadly sickness, Zuuk made a deal with Clavicus Vile, Daedric Prince of Bargains and Trickery. The chieftain prayed to Vile for her people to be immune to the disease, and the Daedra obliged, but at the cost of these villagers' mortality, and their flesh. Zuuk further explains that the true threat posed by the Worm Cult's presence in Stillrise is that, during the previous night's raid, the necromancers stole the Soul Gem Array, the object in which Clavicus Vile placed the souls of all Stillrise inhabitants. With this array in their possession, it would only be a matter of time until the cultists found a way to bind the Kothringi to their will and turn the Stillrise lustrous folk into an army of undead thralls. Zuuk asks the Vestige to speak with Shaman Chira and help in his plan to stop the Worm Cult's enslavement of the village. In speaking with Chira, you find that his plan is essentially just to have you go recover the Soul Gem Array from the worms, but there's a catch. Touching the array will kill any living creature. Chira explains that by making an offering to Clavicus Vile, the Vestige can get around this problem and retrieve the array safely. He goes on to say that War Chief Halush can provide entry into Vile's shrine. Through some optional dialogue, the Vestige learns that Chira and a few other Stillrise Kothringi believe their immortality to be a curse, and wish they had fallen to the Nahatan flu with their brethren so many years ago. Upon meeting Halush, it's clear that he and his followers hold opposing views to Chira's group. Without the need for food or sleep, and without vulnerability to disease or death, the warriors of Stillrise see their immortality as a gift. After this chat with Halush, he provides the Vestige with a key to Vile's temple. Once you've entered the temple and placed an offering at the blood altar therein, Clavicus Vile himself speaks to the Vestige.
You bear a gift? How thoughtful! But I can't accept it without providing one of my own. I know. I'll share the same gift I gave Stillrise Village. Now you can play Skeever Wicket with your own skull.
Fortunately, in discussing your new predicament with one of Shaman Chira's acolytes, the Vestige finds that this new weight loss is only temporary. The acolyte mentions that, contrary to what Halush told you before, being in this form does not render the Vestige invincible, and that Chira's healing magic is what restores the Stillrise Kothringi when they've fallen. She also lets you know that she affixed one of her toe knuckles to the Soul Gem Array in the past.
What the hell?
And that she can sense the array's current location as the Worm Cult encampment just outside the village. Once again, the worm cult poses no threat to the vestige, and upon pummeling many of their grunts and their leader, Bonecrafter Lashak, into the ground, you're able to recover the soul gem array and return it to Chieftain Sulak. Upon talking to Sulak, she tells the vestige that Halushk and Chira have asked her to step down due to the theft of the array having occurred on her watch. She says that the war chief and shaman disagree on the future of Stillrise Village. Halushk wants to preserve the soul gem array forever, which would prevent any future threat of its theft, but would also mean that the villagers will remain undead for eternity. Chira wants to destroy the array, thereby releasing its hold on the villagers' souls and allowing them passage to Aetherius. At this point, you have to choose a side. I'm going to play through and discuss each scenario, but if you would prefer to play through this questline and experience the ending yourself, go ahead and pause the video now and skip ahead to 14 minutes 32 seconds. Whether you choose to side with Halushk or Chira, the other leader will storm out of the room and ready their followers to oppose you.
You can't be so cruel. This is eternal torment. My acolytes won't allow you to curse us with life. You'd kill our people to save them? What madness is that? My warriors won't allow you to perpetrate this foolishness.
To either preserve or destroy the array, you must return to the Shrine of Clavicus Vile while fighting your way through the opposing leader's minions. In the final room leading up to the shrine, the vestige must face off against the leader himself in a fight to the death. After defeating either Halushk or Chira and approaching the braziers in the next room, Clavicus Vile pipes up again.
You felt the true splendor of my gift to Stillrise Village. What gift have you for them, I wonder? Preserve their existence or end it forever? Which will it be? Probably the boring one.
Vile's final commentary differs depending on whether you choose to preserve the soul gem array or destroy it.
Callous brute. You would remove their capacity to truly die, forcing them to suffer their endless existence until the end of time? Are you too weak to allow them the rest deserved by all mortal creatures? How intoxicating. Now, be gone. Heartless oaf. You destroy everyone in Stillrise Village, despite the ones who clearly wish to go on? All to endure pain and sickness they can no longer feel? How delicious. Now, be gone.
The vestige will then regain their fleshy parts, after which you can make your way back to the village to speak with Chieftain Sulak, whose dialogue also varies depending on your choice.
You've chosen what we couldn't for ourselves. Without the fate of the soul gem array held over us, we can finally begin to think of our future. Thank you, Arbiter. You are always welcome in Stillrise Village. You've protected Stillrise Village from weak thinking and necromantic tyranny. More than anything, you've given us a future, possibly beyond these huts in this swamp. We're our own people now, and we couldn't have been without your help. And so it ends. You made the choice, we could not. My people are now at peace. At last, you've freed us from our miserable existence. This was no life, just a mockery of better days. I feel Clavicus Vile's curse fading. It won't be long now. Thank you for allowing us the dignity of death.
Regardless of the fate you choose for the Kothringi of Stillrise, your reward for the quest will be a small amount of gold and the skeleton polymorph, which allows the vestige to take skeletal form at your leisure. One final interesting tidbit to note about the Stillrise Kothringi is the description of a player costume, the Stillrise Right Collar, released in a later ESO update. Quote, "The few Kothringi that survived the tumultuous events at Stillrise Village now serve the ideal masters. So if you see this garb, flee." This text suggests that whether you choose to end the Stillrise lustrous folk or continue their undead existence, at least a few of these silver-skinned yet skeletal beings made their way to the Soul Cairn to become servants of that harsh realm's rulers. As you continue your adventure in Shadowfen, you'll come across the village of Zuuk, which has been overrun by Aldmeri Dominion forces. Upon speaking with the Nebelheart Pact scout on the village outskirts, you learn that the only remaining inhabitant of Zuuk is a Kothringi man who has been tied up and interrogated by the Dominion troops in their search for an arcane relic called a keystone. If you've completed other parts of the zone story in Shadowfen, you'll recognize that the keystones are an integral part of the Dominion's plans to take over the province. After speaking with the scout further, she asks you to infiltrate Zuuk and rescue the Kothringi fellow in hopes that he'll be able to help the Pact get their hands on the keystone, thereby foiling the Dominion's plot. The scout also mentions that this Kothringi appears to be a bit unstable, and that if he truly is one of the lustrous folk, he would be the last of his kind. Of course, we know that might be untrue depending on the vestige's choice in Stillrise. You'll find the Kothringi named Drillick near the center of the village. Speaking to him confirms the instability mentioned by the scout earlier.
You there! Untie us! We understand you would not recognize royalty when tied to a pillar. Therefore, we request you untie us. Perhaps. But we can think of nothing while our kingdom lies in ruins. We slowly comprehend what a boar must feel while trussed up and awaiting a feast. Follow us. Our castle is nearby.
After following him to his castle, his strange dialogue continues.
You've proven yourself worthy of becoming one of our subjects. What is your name? Then we conscript you into our service. We are King Drillick, your liege lord. We will entertain your petitions, should you have any. When our kingdom is secure and our dignity restored, the keystone will reveal itself. So says the prophecy. The first order of business is to create a new crown. We sense your reluctance, but nothing can be done without our crown.
Now, if you've taken the Fighters Guild passive skill Intimidating Presence, you can choose a special dialogue option that bypasses the creation of a new crown. I highly recommend this perk as it comes in handy many times throughout ESO by helping you get around several of those go fetch this thing sort of requests. Upon choosing this dialogue option, Drillick will give the vestige another task.
A canny one. We dare not question your honor when it fills you to the brim. It's true, we need no crown to be king, but how can we rule with our subjects in perilous danger? The invaders bind our subjects with foul magics. They hold Laram, Deathril, and Sarase in our lowlands. When mages bind the helpless, they keep a scroll of release at hand. Find one of these scrolls and free our bound subjects. A good king listens to his people. We hear their pleas day and night. Even now they speak to us. We find it curious you cannot also hear their cries.
After finding the Scroll of Release, you'll need to take down the Dominion Pyromages binding each of Drillick's subjects, who are actually spirits of dead Kothringi who had once resided in Zuuk with Drillick before the Nahaten flu swept through the village. Once you've freed each spirit, you can return to Drillick to give him the good news.
We no longer hear the wailing of our people. Have you freed them? Spirits? Nonsense! Come, we'll show you. Our subjects await a royal declaration at the castle tower. It's not every day you'll have the honor of escorting a king through his dominion. And you shall have it according to prophecy. The king in his tower declaims the keystone's hour. Have no fear. Your king shall be the vessel of your deliverance. As certain as we can be when it comes to prophecy, but we will do all in our power to ensure it comes to pass.
Once you've made your way to the tower, you'll find statues of the three spirits you released earlier, all standing in a circle. As the vestige steps close to the statues, Drillick will stand in the center of them.
We have returned! Rejoice! Your king reclaims his kingdom! Long have invaders occupied our lands, but do not be afraid, for our royal army has a new captain. Come now, address the people, Captain. Why are you speaking to us? Address our citizens, Captain of the Royal Army. You don't wish to become Captain of the Royal Army? We apologize, but the only other position is Royal Consort. Though we seek to cause no offense, you simply don't intrigue us in that fashion. What's happening?
Drillick, remember your duty.
The keystone. I remember it now.
Now that Drillick has regained his memories, his dialogue is much more coherent.
Forgive me. The Dominion's torture ripped my thoughts away from myself. I tried to tell you before, but it was like speaking with a mind full of sap. The keystone is sealed in the Temple of Zuuk. I'll do all I can to help you retrieve it. While my people still lived, we sealed the temple with a magic ward to keep angry spirits and undead from following us out. Say Betrix to the temple door to unseal it. It means open in my language. Oh, I used to speak so many languages, but I've forgotten most of them. There's much I can't remember. Go, I'll be fine. I just need some time to rest.
This is the point at which, if you plan to play through this quest and want to experience it yourself, I'd recommend skipping ahead to prevent the outcome from being spoiled. Go ahead and jump to 25 minutes 30 seconds if that's your preference. After entering the temple, the vestige must solve a puzzle to gain access to the room where the keystone is supposedly housed. However, you'll find nothing inside but an empty pedestal. Upon approaching the pedestal, an alien ghost will appear.
Another looter come to steal alien treasures?
Be gone from this temple. There is nothing for you here.
The keystone was stolen, absorbed by a Kothringi named Drillick. The Nahatan flu killed the rest, but somehow he was immune. Did he send you here?
I don't answer to you. You are standing on hollowed ground, heathen.
However you answer, the spirit will attack you, and the vestige will have to defeat her before leaving the ruins.
You shall pay for your insolence.
You'll then return to Drillick and speak with him.
You're back, but without the keystone. What happened? Absorbed? I don't know. I entered the temple and saw the keystone, and then nothing. Now that you've said it, I feel something. That must have been what kept me alive when the rest of my village died. Kothringi. Yes, I remember now. I am a Kothringi. A plague swept across the village. Sickness, death, corpses piled everywhere. Is that why I entered the temple? To find the keystone? No, I'm the last of the Kothringi. I should rejoin my people. There's a ritual to pass the keystone on to you, although it would mean my death. Let me give you the keystone. At least my survival will have meaning.
The vestige must choose whether to absorb the keystone, thereby killing Drillick, or leave it intact and keep him alive. Quite the difficult choice to make. Respect Drillick's wishes and allow him to rejoin his people in Aetherius, thereby eliminating potentially the last living Kothringi, or leave Drillick alive, likely dooming him to a life of general insanity. Speak to Drillick further to make your decision.
When you absorb the keystone, a part of the Kothringi will live on as well. Thank you for helping me restore my sanity. Use this keystone well. I am prepared for this. My village and my family all died without purpose. I've lived long enough alone. I'm ready to join them. There is nothing left for me here except for these statues. Statues I built to remember my people, so I could have someone to talk to. Yes, that's why I built them. Someone to talk to.
After the choice is made, the vestige must return to the Pact Scout to complete the quest. Her dialogue varies depending on the fate you chose for Drillick.
You've been gone for some time. How'd it go? Absorbed it? I'm not sure how I'll report that to the Vice Cannons, but you recovered it. That's all that matters. Hey, I wouldn't want the death of the last Kothringi on my conscience. As far as I'm concerned, the keystone was lost to the swamps.
With that, the Vestige's encounters with the Kothringi end, and by extension, so do ours. However, before I wrap up, I want to talk through a few theories that are either adjacent or directly related to these silver-skinned folk. The first topic I'd like to cover here is the Nahatan flu. While essentially every race in Tamriel was affected by the flu, other than the Argonians that is, I'd argue that the Kothringi were hit the hardest, what with their basically going extinct and all. But where did the flu come from? One account suggests that it simply came about naturally. However, the most widely accepted theory is that an Argonian shaman somehow manipulated his trees to create the plague in retaliation for the cruelties Argonians had been subjected to by the other races. With that said, there is another lesser-known theory that I tend to agree with more. Remember that Ayleid ghost we fought against at Zuuk? Well, maybe you don't if you skipped over that part earlier, but that's beside the point. If you tell her Drillick sent you into the temple to find the keystone, she has this to say.
The Kothringi sent you to steal more Ayleid treasures. If only the flu had worked. Do not take me for a fool thief. You shall not leave this tomb alive.
If only the flu had worked? What? Did the Ayleids create the flu? If so, that discovery poses even more questions than it answers. Weren't most of the Ayleids wiped out during the First Era? Well, although the Ayleid Empire was overthrown in the early First Era, smaller tribes of Ayleids known as Wild Elves have been reported to still live in remote locations across Tamriel. It would stand to reason that these Wild Elves might want revenge against those who overthrew the Ayleid Empire, but if that was their reason for creating the flu, then why not make it infect Argonians as well? The reptilian folk had a hand in the Ayleid's downfall too, after all. Well, what if they couldn't? Argonians are widely known to have a natural immunity to poison and disease, so it's likely that such an affliction would be inconsequential to them. My thought is that the Ayleids found it impossible to create a disease that affected Argonians and all other races, so they simply decided to get the most bang for their buck while also sowing discord by making it appear that the flu was created by the lizard folk. And if the Ayleids really did create the flu, it would be in line with reports of the cruel and brutal nature of these despicable elves of the Heartland. Another theory I wanted to discuss is the true origin of the Kothringi. As I mentioned earlier, the lustrous folk can trace their lineage back to the Needs, but that doesn't explain the silver hue of Kothringi skin. My thought is that the Kothringi's Nedic ancestors interbred with one of Tamriel's other races, as they were known to do, in the early Merethic period, resulting in the genesis of our favorite silver-skinned tribal folk. But what other race's genes could have sparked such an odd pigmentation? Initially, I thought it could have been the Dunmer with their various shades of gray potentially interacting with the Nedic DNA to generate a lighter, shinier tone, however, the timing doesn't add up. If the Kothringi truly were around in the late Merethic period as some of their artifacts suggest, then the Dunmer couldn't have been their ancestors, as the gray skin we know today did not come about until the Battle of Red Mountain in First Era 700. So then, what other Tamrielic race could have gotten it on with the early Needs to beget our silver-skinned friends? Well, I have a pretty compelling hunch. The Maormer, or Sea Elves as many call them, are known to have a wide range of skin tones spanning from colorless and chameleon-like to pearly white, light blue, and often gray or silver. Curious. Additionally, the Maormer would have been around in the Merethic era as they were exiled from Aldmeris before the Aldmer settled Somerset in the early times of that period. Yet another, although anecdotal tidbit supporting this theory is that the Maormer are known to attack and raid along much of Tamriel's western and southern coasts. Although not specifically mentioned in historical texts, it would not be a stretch for the Sea Elves to have pillaged the coast of Murkmire, sowing their proverbial seeds with the early Needs of Blackmarsh as they went. Alright folks, that's it for this video. From my perspective, the Kothringi are a fascinating yet tragic part of Tamriel's history. But what do you think? Will you be loading up your version of the Vestige to go experience the Kothringi questline for yourself? Do you have any theories about these silver-skinned people of the marshlands? I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. This first foray into discussing the lore of the Elder Scrolls universe was really enjoyable for me, so let me know if you'd like to see more content from Lore Lane. Special thanks to Jerry, Chef, Crispy, Gerb, Tala, Brew, Baz, Zoo, the Dynasty of Tamriel Guild, and my wonderful wife. I'd also like to thank my subscribers and viewers for the continued support. We're on the road to 1,500 subscribers, so if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and click that button for easy access to my upcoming content and to help me reach that next milestone. Finally, if you found this video interesting or helpful, don't forget to feed that algorithm with a like and share with a friend if you're so inclined. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.